9:30 a.m., May 9th, 2022. Call to order the Budget, Finance, and Administrative Committee Special Workshop. Moment of silence, please. Mr. Root.
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Father, thank you for this new day. Beautiful start to the week. Help us to appreciate it, to not take it for granted that we woke up this morning and that you've given us a new day to rejoice and do good work in. And I pray that you give us guidance to do that good work today. In this meeting, may it be your meeting. In your name I pray. Amen.
Mr. Arnold, will you lead us in the pledge?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there a motion to approve the May 3rd, 2022 Budget, Finance, and Administrative Regular Minutes?
So move. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
No.
Aye.
That is 5-0, Mr. Chair.
Discussion items. Fiscal year 2022-2023 budget discussion and review. Ms. Brock.
Good morning. Good Monday morning. I have placed documents on the DS at each of your desks. On the left are some updated pages that were emailed to you last week. I want to make sure everyone had those in print. I'm going to go over that one first. It's Mr. Durham's recommendation to line up. Mr. Durham, you need a second?
Yeah, before we start, I ran some rooms too. I just like to pass out my sheet
Okay, perfect.
where they got changed. Thank you.
Is this one page?
Yes, ma'am.
Hold on, I'm coming, Jim.
So it looks like I did pretty much what you did with a few extra accounts. I just went through the check register and pulled Fleet Cord, Lindsay Oil, anything that was to do with fuel. And a couple of things I couldn't tie to anything was the top two items, accounts receivable for Senior Solutions, or not accounts receivable, I don't know. And then add accounts for Anderson Solicitor, which is part of Fleet Cord.
Reimbursable. Those are reimbursable accounts.
Okay. So we charge it and then they reimburse us?
Correct.
What does the reimbursement show at?
When it comes in, it'll show on the actual check register budget document.
And then I got your email about that bottom item.
Yes, sir.
What's it at? It's at the very bottom, diesel inventory off-road.
Correct.
So that's $148,000, but you said it was transfer, where we had it in storage, like an asset, I guess, and then we
It is.
transferred it each month?
We allocate it to departments, and then monthly those departments are charged back for the amount of fuel that they use.
So like this right here, it says vehicle department, so each month, and a portion of this is going to different departments.
A lot of it goes to different departments.
So where is that captured, I guess, is what I'm asking?
In their department budget.
Okay. So so this was
example-
Lindsay Oil, so vehicle maintenance buys it from Lindsay Oil. They hold it as an asset from that.
And we have it in a fuel truck, so that we take that fuel truck to fuel off-road vehicles, or like at the landfill. We take a fuel truck to the landfill to fill up the loader. We
Okay.
take a truck to the tub grinder. At the end of the month, each department receives their vehicle maintenance report. Those include oil filters, tire changes, parts inventories and supplies. So the fuel is allocated in that as well, monthly.
Okay. So when I was pulling the check register, then I wouldn't see that listed in,
No, that's internal department.
okay. So I'm assuming, 'cause if I look at the, which one was it? I think roads and bridges, we was well under budget. I'm assuming then that's because a lot of this off-road diesel was transferred to roads and bridges.
I can't say without having to dig into that specific account.
That's only transferred when they use it. There's no extra to them.
Right.
What's she saying?
There is no, it's only transferred as they use it, so there's no extra allocated at any time.
I just want to know how we can track then, I mean, I'm sure y'all have it, then if roads department used $50,000 of off-road diesel that got transferred from the inventory, where's that captured at?
In the monthly journal entry ledger so vehicle maintenance, we treat it as like a shop.
Yeah.
So what we have, say, if you need this for your vehicle for the road department, for instance, when we purchase it, it comes in as a vehicle maintenance purchase. When we allocate it back out to the road department, it is taken off of vehicle maintenance and put into the road department.
So that's probably why I didn't see just through the check register, all the road department.
Right, and you can't see them for many of the departments because we have the consignment. So every year we close vehicle maintenance at the end of June and reopen early July, because we have to close out the year. So anything we've had on the books from the previous year, we have to make sure that that's listed as the asset, and then July 1 or July 2nd sometimes, we go back and allocate that back to vehicle maintenance. And all of those are consolidated at the end of the year.
So with that, if I took all the fuel, and I've also included in here the enterprise fund, right? So we said that was different, but with all that, then I have us at year-to-date, a little over $1 million in fuel usage. And then if you just project it out of 10-month average, which that's not necessarily would be accurate because fuel is much higher now than it was 10 months ago now. But, that puts us at 1.4 million. And out of all the fuel I could gather in the budget, I calculated that we budgeted 1,040,000 and some change.
Without seeing all of the information, obviously this is the first time I've seen this, our sheet is showing that we're roughly projected to be just a little under 170. So we have about $200,000 difference there, and then our projection for diesel is 40.
Man, I got diesel and gasoline all combined.
Oh, you got it mixed together, okay. That's probably a little bit closer.
Which, I mean, if I look at that, if projection on 10-month average, again, the next 2 months is going to be higher than average, should be, but that would put us at 40% over across all accounts on fuel.
So we have some ideas on how to address that.
Okay.
And we've never gone over. I just want to say that for the record. In all the years that we've done this budget, we have never gone over. Now, one line item or another may go over, and if there was ever a use of fund balance, it was typically approved by council prior to that budget year beginning. So let's take administrator's department because that one's very simple. If I went over on my gasoline usage in that department, we would look at other line items within that department that were under budget. Say if I estimated a copy machine was going to cost me $1,000 and it only cost $850, that $150 can be designated and utilized for any overages within that department at the end of the year. So we have several departments that are over and several that are under, and we will equalize those out to make sure that no department is in the red.
Ms. Brock, would it help if we went over this sheet Because that's got y'all's projections for May and June versus an annualized number, Matt. It might be-
Yeah, and I kind of projected it out too, but I did off a 10-month average, but yeah, that'd be fine. I just
So
did
they're
10-month
very
average times 12.
That's right, very basic, common principle. I think we're tracking in the same way. We ran ours through CSI, which is our accounting software. So if you want to take a glimpse at this sheet, we'll see the departments, and I'll just name off the few. The sheriff's and emergency services and road department. Those are our largest departments with the consumption. Some of our other departments are over. So what we'll do is take that average and try to create a fuel contingency for the upcoming budget. Do we need to go through this line by line?
I'm just looking to see if there's a few differences on mine from y'all's, but it's just, pulling from Excel versus.
He's got.
So I'm just in my head trying to take out the rock crusher.
I'm pretty sure. Mr. Durham, Ms. Price just pointed out that on your sheet, you may have included fuel oil, which is natural gas.
Okay, where's that? Where do you see that at? That would be good.
I'm
to
not
know.
sure.
No, it's just so much. And maybe not. I may have misspoke, because he's got rock quarry in here and I do not.
Right, so we don't have the rock quarry on our sheet too, so that may be a part of the discrepancy there as well.
So, I mean, if I look at it, I see with just 2 months, really, called March, April, all the high gas prices that we're already struggling. And then next year, I mean, today's supposed to set a record high. I mean, it's showing no signs of turning. And I know we don't plan for worst case scenario always. You'll budget everything worst case, but you also don't want to budget for the best case either and be hung out to dry. I guess my biggest fear is that we're past a budget, and then we're going to come back late summer, fall, and then just have to amend it. And then pulling from the general fund, I don't think it's an answer either, not the general fund, but the fund balance, because that's just gonna have to be replaced. So if we can budget for it accordingly now, I think it's our best priority. But
So can we go over your plan about what
We
we're
do
gonna do?
have a recommendation. So on your replacement pages, your summary page 1 of 7, which looks like this, and these were emailed to you, but there are hard copies on your desk. So Mr. Durham, based on your recommendation for being able to track the 6% cost of living increase with the departmental pages, since the departmental pages were printed 2 weeks after the 6% calculation was done, we went back, reran that number to make sure that the departmental increase pages for the 6% cost of living were reflective of each departmental page. So that way there would be a consistency in the time of the employees in specific departments. From that, we captured a savings of $64,788. That reflection is on page 1 of 7 on the summary page. It's also on page 7 of 7, the updated number, which is the 6% cost of living sheet, reflective of the same date that the departmental pages were created. And also reflected on page 32 of the administrator's page, because that 6% cost of living increase was reflected in one departmental cost, so that if we made a minor change, we wouldn't be replacing that again. Does everybody track with the updated pages before I go into my request and recommendation? Okay, this is a lot of documents again. So our recommendation is for us to begin a fuel, gasoline/diesel contingency account, beginning with the balance of the savings from the 6% updated cost of living, which is $64,788. the second step in creating funds for this contingency account, and that's simply if the verification of funds are available, are to utilize the savings from the current year's utilities in the amount of $50,000. That is a very conservative estimate on utility usage for the remainder of the year, and an additional unexpended funds from vacated salaries for up to $100,000, contingent upon the verification of those funding. We know that we have, I think, as of Friday, we had 28 open positions at Oconee County. We know those funds are allocated for salaries, but in the event that the fuel doesn't cap off and level, we will have a contingency account. That way, toward the end of the year, we will know that we have a safe space of funding. And if any of these funds are not utilized, then of course, they would roll back to unexpended fund balance. And we would like that put in as a proviso, so that we don't have to go in and calculate which departments are over or under and do an allocated amount per department. For instance, if the sheriff's office is over $50,000, this proviso would allow, and we would bring the transfer back to council, anything above $49,999. This would allow for the coverage of anything over without us having to utilize fund balance and without us having to adjust the fuel amounts, as the fuel amounts are unpredictable from month to month.
I make a motion to amend the budget to reflect that proviso, the recommendation for the administrator.
Mr. Chairman, if I just could, just because we're sitting as a budget committee, I don't know that you need to do any
Okay.
motions at this point. You could, and say we'll carry it over as a motion when we sit as county council, but then it wouldn't make any difference really. So
Okay, so we just need to make the motion on second reading.
it gives us a heads up, so we know. But, and I would say, if I could, Mr. Chairman, since we have this time, Ms. Brock's not gonna be here on the 17th, she's out because her daughter's got the recital. So I'll be here along with Ms. Price. I don't know this budget like they do. I don't know the operational detail at all. I do the provisos to make some things happen. So if you can, work out these, like you did, tell us about motions that may come, and if you have something else to give a heads up on by, like, say, Friday, just so I can be prepared as best I can, so we don't bog down on second reading, that would be great. All right, that's all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So, Mr. Chairman, as I look through like other areas, so the Oconee support's increased by $65,000. I guess why?
Oconee support is a line item utilized for agencies that offer services specific to Oconee County residents. Those services during this budget year, and they do fluctuate every year, were remarkably higher because we provided life jackets, we provided gravel for the Boy Scouts, any area where it is a specific service for Oconee County, including in-kind county grant matches for our own services, we utilize that. That number typically every other year goes up or down depending on the grant processes that our agencies are applying for.
That could be something that we could hold stable and realize 65,000 more dollars available.
Or we could just take it out completely. We could cut a lot of things out of the budget. Cut PRT out. It's not a necessary function of government. I'm sorry, save us a couple million. Or we
If you're
could
not
keep
gonna-
it
If you're
in the
not gonna take this
funds.
seriously, then I don't know why you came in.
Well, these are things that are used, for example, Ride to Work Ministry, great program that provides folks rides to work. I believe it also, it's Golden Corner Food Pantry, receive funding from
Yes,
that.
sir.
I think the
Our
Homeless
daily
Shelter,
rest, our daily bread.
Our Daily Bread, Red Cross, Blue Ridge Community Center, organizations that relieve the burden on government. Sullivan Center, the Health Center.
but Oconee County government probably couldn't provide resources as cost efficiently. And so, I think leaving that in there and staying with the administrator's recommendations, since they know this budget in and out and where the accounts flow to, I would stick with the recommendation on that. I think there's going to be, I expect that folks from the Utica area are going to be asking for some assistance this year that they haven't asked for before, that's a huge cost center for the county in terms of law enforcement. If we can stabilize that area with a little bit of investment in some of the nonprofits over there that are seeking to reduce drug abuse and create, job opportunities and stuff, I think that will pay dividends down the road. We cut about anything in here, but I would stick with that 65 personally.
This is 65,000 increase from 150 to 215,000. We're not, yes, we listen to the administrator, but we are the governing body. If we're going to always never question anything, then there's really no use in us being here. Ms. Brock, one thing that I did see that I think got missed is for facility maintenance, 51 or 101. It's a small amount, but the water at the courthouse didn't increase by 20%. It did in most areas in Walhalla, but the courthouse did not.
So if you look at their actual, sir, and that's where we come up with some of the budget numbers, we've never gone above 36. We did not make that increase.
So since it was just
If we're looking at
32
that,
in 2021, so we'll stay at 36, that makes sense.
does that help?
Yeah.
We try, even when we get the budget request in, we do try to go back and look at the actuals, which is something the departments do run on their monthlies. At the courthouse, they use restrooms. So if you'll notice at the detention center where we do washing, drying, showering of inmates, we did make a significant increase there because we know that we had a low census during the COVID period. And there is an increase for places where the water rates inside city limits or outside of city limits, where those rates may see an increase simply based on increased usage as well as the increase of the rate itself.
I'm sorry, I just have notes throughout. I'm just
That's okay.
finding something maybe I haven't talked about.
Just a note of that too, while you're looking for your next one. The administrator's contingency account is typically utilized for anything that was unforeseen. Or say, if we had a water leak at the courthouse and we had to expend the entire year amount on that one water leak, specifically the courthouse because it's hooked to a main on Main Street, so it may take a little bit longer for them to locate that kind of leak. We would utilize the administrator's contingency account to cover any overages that were unforeseen.
And I got this flagged here. What Mickey was talking about the airport fuel. I don't know if y'all remember. What he pointed out was that we increased the fuel budget for the aviation fuel by 500,000. And he pointed that you locate the expenditure increase by 500, but you don't see the revenue increase. And I know it's on separate pages. The charges is on page 18 of 101. Then I gotta find, I guess it's in the airport budget.
So that's with the 500,000. So will your 22 budget, that's with the 500,000 increase on both sides. That was
So-
after the approval of the supplemental.
Yeah, so this is charges, so this is revenue, right? That I'm looking on page 18.
That's page 18, yes, sir, that's revenue. So if you look at
So-
the 2019, our budget amount was 775,
Or,
Jet A. Or I guess on here it says jet fuel.
Uh,
So the
so-
budget amount was 775. We realized more than that.
so when we passed the budget last year, the 2022 budget amount was 775.
No, sir, that was 2019.
I'm sorry, 19.
Last year, what was it, before the amendment?
It was 775.
It was 775. Because we had seen a decrease in the months, and COVID had a specific impact.
So then this is just an estimate, it's not actual. So we're estimating then that we just sell that at cost? If we went from 775, added 500 to purchase, and now we're at,
No, sir, there would be no assumption to sell it at cost.
because if I just add 500,000 dollar for dollar, I'm at, from 775, 1.275. Which would be at cost.
Is there a different amount you would like to see in that
No,
column?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around what he pointed to. I'm sorry, I'm going back to. Who's that? So on page 33 of 101, you can see from fiscal year 21 actual on jet fuel went from 442,000 to 975. So that's the $500,000 amended budget.
That's an amendment, yes, sir.
So then showing the revenue on page 18 from fiscal year 21 have increased by at least that amount?
Not,
I mean, if we buy it to sell, shouldn't we sell at least that?
okay, so jet fuel's another one of those things that we have in a tank and in a truck. So we didn't sell all of it and close it out on June 30th.
Right.
If we bought 5,000 gallons,
Okay.
there's 3,500 gallons in the tank in the ground, which was an expenditure in one year.
Right.
The revenues may be realized in the next year. We don't zero out fuel.
Okay.
We have a Jet A and an avgas truck, so anything accounted for in the vehicle or in the underground tank, we wouldn't zero out and start over. And jet fuel and avgas are both like regular gasoline. Those prices fluctuate. So if we bought the Jet A on a day where it was a little higher, then, we have to have it. So if it's 4 cents more a gallon, we have to pay 4 cents more a gallon because jets have to come and go. So our price may go up just a little bit, which would reduce the amount of quote-unquote profit.
You mean our cost would go up?
Our cost, but our price for sale would also go up, but maybe not the same percentage, because if we're not competitive, we won't be selling that fuel. We're pretty competitive on our Jet A. We're pretty competitive when it comes to the other airports. I don't think I brought that sheet with me, but I did do a regional price sheet of airports around us. We're pretty competitive for the larger jets. But Mr. Durham, I hope that, so we don't start on July 1st at zero.
Right.
So
I
it
understand.
depends on
So
how
that's
much
what we talked about
inventory.
before. You're gonna have,
Well, and you
in the year
may,
you have
you may
an
have
asset
an
of fuel
expenditure that you don't realize that revenue for until the next year, if that makes sense.
And I think that's what Mr. Hand is missing. There's a sheet that shows the inventory.
Yeah.
You're not gonna, you're not gonna match it, because we do keep an inventory. And the inventory's gonna fluctuate from year to year, right? June 30th.
Yes.
Inventory's not gonna be the same.
Right, so on June
Volume-wise or
30th, we
dollar-wise?
do kind of zero it out on paper by realizing how much we have in the tank, how much we have in sales, how much we have on hold. And then on July 1, that amount is entered back into the system. But it's never gonna be, this was what we started with on this day and this is what we ended with, because we're always gonna have some in the tank.
I understand. Yeah, so we saw increase in sales, so we needed to buy more and we got more and, you know.
But we
it's-
may not
it's-
realize those revenues
It's
for.
understandable that we won't sell it all and, by the end of the fiscal year. will
Right,
have
and
something to say.
sometimes it's odd, if like, we may get a jet fuel delivery on June 15th, which would make it look like this current year, we should be realizing those revenues, but we may not sell all that fuel until the second week in July.
And we can sell more fuel or less fuel in a year.
Yeah.
It depends on the change in inventory.
Right. I think I understand that.
If you want to go out and see how we do our Jet A and Avgas, it's a pretty interesting process, because we have to report to the FAA on our inventories.
Yeah.
So we may have this amount on this day, and of course, if we do sales, then we have to match that exact same amount for the FAA and inventory and QC control.
So, just kind of recap in my mind, what you talked about fuel is you're estimating a $50,000 in utility savings.
We're estimating greater than 50,000, but we want to make sure that we're as conservative as possible and allowing some room for error or increases. Say we have 3 weeks of 100-degree days, we want to make sure that we're not expending or earmarking an energy savings that may be required in reality in the current year. So our estimation of $50,000 is conservative, yes, sir.
So I saw, throughout the budget where some buildings, some facilities, different things, the energy costs have went down. I mean, is that associated to the
Yes,
efficiency?
yes.
So that's what we're estimating, but you're estimating that we may come in even lower than.
We hope to come in lower. And the reason we selected the utility, and we've left ourselves some room in there just in case we have some unforeseen issues or circumstances. But it seemed like if we need utilities to operate buildings, that the closest thing we could transfer from to the gasoline and or diesel would be gas or diesel is a utility to a vehicle or equipment, the same as the utilities are operational for a building. So we were trying to find to make sure that what we were doing was comparable in scale.
Right. And then as far as positions not being filled, I mean, how much did we not spend this year on open positions?
Can we run on open salaries?
There was, the one I ran on the other day was around 208.
Oh, that's right. Right now, we're at about 208. I should have that sheet. That is on my desk. And I have that document not in here. Do you have it on you?
I think I gave it to you.
It's probably on my desk. I'd be happy to email that after this meeting this morning, what our current savings are.
So we would normal years just roll that into the fund balance and.
Correct.
And I got wrote on my sheet 67,000. Where was that from?
So the 67,000 came from, okay, so look at page 7 of 7 on the email that we sent you Thursday or Friday. And then the documents on your desk. I put copies on your desk. And it looks like this, and it's got a light green column to the far right. It should be the last one in the paperclip, Mr. Durham.
Oh, that's right. That's from the adjustments of the
So
salaries.
that's where we did the exact date to exact date for the 6% cost of living, because those documents were created a month apart.
Mr. So we're looking at then roughly $217,000, I guess, for reserve for fuel contingency. And based off this sheet, I'll put mine to the side for now because I forgot the enterprise fund and everything else on there. So we're looking at about 213 over projected with the nets. And you did yours the same as mine. You did the projected by taking the average of 10
We
times
sure did.
12. Which if things keeps going, that's, you know.
But it's anybody's guess, because it looks like we're going into a deep recession. If we go into a deep recession, fuel prices will go down historically.
But then if we think we're going into a deep recession, are we doing the, then we got other issues, as far as funding additional positions, which I support many of them. I think we all see that coming, Mr. Elliott. We just want to prepare as best we can the county for that.
That's why we have a rainy day fund. Which is $10 million right now. Needs to be 14.
But we don't want to rely on that. We want to plan as best we can.
We have a rainy day fund.
What we spend out of that, we have to
My family
replace.
has a rainy day fund. I'm sure yours does.
Anybody have anything else? Questions?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I just have one more comment. Mr. Durham, this is not exclusively the only source for us covering any fuel or gasoline shortage. Typically, say my department, I know we went back to that same example. This is for a contingency if the allocated funds for budgeted items that come in under budget cannot be utilized. This would be a quote-unquote rainy day fund for overages on fuel.
And if we pass it in the way that I guess is stated, or we amend it next Tuesday night, the way it's stated, then it would be in the budget, so it wouldn't necessarily have to be an amendment at some
It would
time.
not have to be an amendment, that's correct. But I would like to say, anytime we do a transfer, even within, because this is specific for that, when we have to, or if we have to do that, I would like, and we'll do it probably just for open transparency, is that we'll bring you a document with the shortages on it and say, these are the departments that need the fuel allocation, so that everybody is aware of where the funds are going.
And I like this additional document, because I was questioning on why we giving 8% raises, so this shows that.
6%.
Yeah, I know, but the way if you just.
On paper, it did look like the 8. And honestly, we had it, we had it, typically, we just tried to make it simple. It was no problem whatsoever to do that.
Mr. Chairman. Few recommendations I have. There was a statement made that we're going to question the administrator. And I think even this year, I've met 3 or 4 times strictly on budget. We've met more than that over things, but I know during my first year especially, starting in June, to learn what we're doing and where we're at in the budget meeting, from the auditor to the assessor to the airport and everything like that, helped me to understand things that when I got questions from outside, it kind of helped guide me to understand where this was at, rock quarry. And so my thing is, it does take a lot of time, especially, this is going in my 6th year now. So, especially in those first couple of years, to try to learn and understand. So, Mr. Durham, I do appreciate you answering, asking questions this year, because I know last year I was a little frustrated because I know it's new, it's a lot. This is a big business. that we all work to run for everybody. So I do appreciate the things that you've brought forth and questioning things. But I do think it's important to go through and meet so you can go more in depth at that. That way, some of the questions, and I'll meet till the cows come home, especially the first 2 years I was in office. I thought we met every single Tuesday. But the whole goal of this is not to wear each of us out up here, to wear staff out, and make sure that we're creating the budget before it gets down to this. So there was, my first 2 years, budget was changed after public hearing on third reading, and it bothered me. And so that has not been done again, because that is not fair to the citizens to go in and change a budget after a public hearing on a third reading. I just don't think that's the transparency that, people are looking for. So we have not had that, to the point that when these budgets have been created over the years and staff and council has met together to kind of talk about their issues, some of it was documented in there. Specific council member said it was the best transparent budget he had ever seen. And that's not one that's sitting up here today, because it was things like this, things that have been brought forth, like what Mr. Durham's brought forth, that's helped. But if you don't ask the questions, you don't get the answers. And so I appreciate you asking the questions this year. I think that assists with the whole process. And again, I know the first 2 years, nobody sits at home and makes up a $60 million budget sitting in this room for their personal life. So if I have $60, I know where that goes. So, but a $60 million budget, until you sit down with finance department, it is difficult to know where it goes. But I think this council has done a great job at budgeting properly. This is not the first time Oconee County has ever budgeted during a recession. This is not the first time gas prices has ever been where they're at. Let's hope they decrease, but we all know that that's not going to happen tomorrow. So I think we're headed in the right direction. Again, how important it was for council to set the standard to put money back in the budget for our fund balance. If we hadn't have done that and we had continued on, we'll just pull it out of this, there's extra money left over, we could be in the dark ages of Oconee County. But instead of that, we've set forth the ordinance, we've abided by that ordinance. We're not going to spend all the money in the budget this year because the administration team has continually made sure to work with the department heads where we actually have money left over at the end of the year that goes back in there. And that is so important as we move forward for if we do have an overage of fuel. And that's what we're doing a great job at budgeting. And, like I said, that comes from council and it comes from administration as well, for the allowance for them to do their jobs and for us to learn how they do their jobs. And unfortunately, sometimes it's, Ms. Brockwell, we sat down about 3 hours going through the budget a couple of months ago just to make sure that I knew where it was at. I questioned several things in there and got the answers that I needed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I agree that it's not wise to make any amendments after the third or just prior to the third reading. But one thing is when we do have a public hearing just prior to that third reading, it's also not fair to the public to say, hey, we're not making any adjustments even if you come up here for a public hearing. So in future years, we may want to look at adjusting the schedule to have that last public hearing.
We have
We have 2 public hearings.
You have a third one, and we're saying we're committed to making no changes after that second one.
Right, so there's a public hearing on
So,
5/17.
There's a public hearing next week.
Right, but what I'm saying is if.
I committed to that. And I don't commit anybody else up here. I'm just stating it had happened.
I think that's a good process because you're gonna make a change and it's done. But in the future, instead of having that second, I don't know, what's the law? Does the law say you have to have 2? You have to have
Just
one.
one.
We added.
Does it have to be on the date of the third hearing?
No.
So in the future, then, we may want to move up that second public hearing to a meeting before the actual third reading, so we can take input.
There is a standalone public hearing for that reason. We added that.
Right, but that second one,
Mr.
then,
Elliott, when did we added that, I think that was during your first year.
Yeah, first year.
We added an additional public hearing for that reason because the 4 minutes, when somebody had a question, the 4 minutes did not allot the time, so I believe that, I have to go back and look at the minutes. I believe that was Mr. Elliott's motion to add a second public hearing. That was a standalone public hearing prior to the third public hearing and that. So if there was something that came up in that, you still would have additional public hearing and that third reading.
I'm in agreement with you that third hearing making changes isn't good. But then that second public reading just prior to the third reading, second public hearing just prior to the third reading, then it's kind of pointless if you say you're not going to make any changes. So in the future, we may want a standalone, if you want to, and then one prior to the second one, if the council is committed to not take drastic changes prior to the third. Or else people are just speaking for nothing at that third reading, second final hearing.
I mean, people can always speak and we can always make changes. I mean, I was just going back in the last two budgets and the third public hearing, 2020's, we had 4 people speak on the second, on the standalone public hearing. On the third public hearing, there was no citizens that spoke. That was on the 2020. So, I mean, we can change it at any time. I mean, I'm not saying, we did that because the budget increased twice on third reading. That was my issue.
And I understand fully. I'm just voicing that. There may be a reason to adjust on the third reading, maybe a public comment, maybe a public hearing, something. But to say we're not immediately following a public hearing, I don't think equally both of them is not the wisest dress. And that's something we can look at before we get into it next year.
Yeah, we'll talk about it in the first budget workshop that we do like in
Yeah.
February or March.
February, yes, sir.
We can talk about that February
Establish the
next
budget
year.
calendar then.
Yeah.
You make a note of it.
Again, that's not something that's set in stone. It's just, like I said, it's just the complaints that during those years when that changed on third reading, from a staff standpoint and from a citizen standpoint, that was really where it was driven to talk about that. So if there was a change, we delayed the third reading one time because we did make some changes. So we did not read those third readings. We scheduled another public hearing. I'll have to go back and pull all that stuff up because of that change. So that has been done before. So, I mean, we're saying the same things. I'm just saying, like, I mean, if that was the case, then we wouldn't have a third reading, but obviously it's required to have a third reading.
If you would, make a note to yourself and bring it up in February next year.
We have it on the budget, on our strategic planning calendar as well. We'll make sure to address that. And we can have multiple public hearings. I think legally we're only required to have one, but we had standalone ones where we only had a public hearing and no readings at some point. Was this your first year, Mr. Elliott?
It was his first year.
And then we had 0 people come, so we set up a meeting for a public hearing, but I think only staff and maybe media was here. So we decided to move public hearing back to a regular scheduled council night, because if it was a special meeting, we didn't have any attendance.
The purpose of that was to give them more than 4 minutes to speak about a budget item.
Right.
And and that was the complaint that we got. I want to talk about the budget, but only have 4 minutes, so we added that second public hearing.
We'll look at it next year.
I think last year, we made a motion to remove the communications director position on third reading, which was unanimous, I believe. So we did change it on third reading. You voted for that, Julie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not unprecedented.
Mr. Chairman? Okay, there was some follow-up discussion. I have a note regarding third reading. which currently is scheduled for June 7th. And there was some discussion about whether we would have an in-person or on telephone or FaceTime quorum.
I think Mr. Hart's gonna be out of town.
I will be out of town as well, but I will come back if necessary and then leave. So if it's necessary that I be physically present here for the meeting,
So
I
do we
will come
need
back.
3 for a quorum and
So
present?
you will participate one way or the other, whether.
yeah.
So Mr.
I'd prefer
Mr. King
not
will be-
to drive back from Myrtle Beach, but I will if necessary.
And I think we said it's permissible based on the current things that have been going on.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would say the older, it's not law, AG opinions aren't law, but they have stated that a remote meeting is fine, this is pre-COVID, have a quorum within who's live, present, where the community is, that's great. Now, as COVID happened, the way the FOIA is written as the public meetings allows for digital meetings, and I've talked to y'all in the past about, really it can be by email, that remote, so to speak. But they've said now, just so long as you all can hear the public can hear you, any times for interaction can happen, y'all could all be remote. Like I was saying, I was just expressing my disfavor, I guess, of that for probably the most important ordinance that we have to do. Just, it'd be great to have everybody here to the extent we can, and to the extent we can't, at least have that quorum present.
So, Mr. King, you'll probably do it by,
Whatever means
so
necessary.
you'll do it by, what do you propose,
I
FaceTime
could do
or something?
Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams,
We could-
FaceTime.
Mr. Hart, will you have access to a phone or computer on the evening of June 7th?
Will I have what?
Access to a phone or computer?
Yes, I'll have a phone.
Okay, so we could do a Zoom and do it through this computer so that it comes through the audio and we're not doing it by telephone, holding it up. We have a government Zoom account that we can utilize here.
I think the only issue, I think we had some issue with that, because that's the way I wanted to do it when we first started having the COVID meetings. And I think there was some interplay with the YouTube that wasn't right. I'll check on that, but that would be the best.
We
yeah.
will do our best to work with IT to make sure that your faces, or at least your voices, are visible during that meeting so that the public does have an understanding that you're here with us in heart and spirit, but maybe not in person.
I'm gonna do some cardboard cutouts. I'll hold you.
So
So
June 7th, we're going to keep on as third and final?
Yes, third and final, June 7th.
I just wanted to follow up on that because I had some notes from our previous meeting about attendance. Okay.
But no, we're talking about next week's meeting. Mr. King, when you will be in Myrtle Beach?
June, well, that week.
June 7th, okay. And Mr. Hart, you'll be out of town too, in Florida.
So I think next week I'm the only one that doesn't have the pleasure of being here.
Are lucky I plan my vacations around this county. I do have one thing,
Yes,
if we're done with budget. I would like to schedule a village workshop on like the 13th of September. We should have, I was hoping we do have, Ms. Hubbard here to, would our numbers be in by then?
You look at the calendar.
That would help. We can kind of go, invite the school district with us as well to talk about that.
Could we not do it prior to the September 6th meeting?
No,
It won't be in?
that, I usually don't get the numbers till the last week in August, not really like a week to work with them prior to. The week of the 13th, any day should work.
Let's set it for the 13th. If we need to change that, Chairman, we can do that.
6 PM?
sure. Everybody good with that?
And that gives your staff enough time to get,
Yeah, I can do, yeah, that'll give me a good week.
okay. Ms. Brown.
We're on it. We will get that scheduled and publicized and include that in our future announcement, just so it stays as a running meeting. like we do when we run our legal ads.
That's probably not a bad thing to have going forward every year.
We used to do them, and I don't know why we stopped, do you?
No, but this year you're gonna have choices. There's gonna be a lot of different scenarios to look at with, with reassessment. So it would be good that you guys know what you're going into the next Tuesday night.
Good idea.
So 6 PM?
Yes, 6 PM. Does anybody have anything else?
Mr. Chairman, is there a
Yes.
need for another budget workshop?
Does anybody feel like there's a need for another budget workshop?
Thanks, sir.
Ms. Brock, anything else?
No, sir, I believe we have our marching orders. We'll have the proviso language and documentation to support that, ready for the May 17th meeting, and they'll please it up to the street and they'll haul them out.
Is there a motion? Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
No.
Aye.